Just before the video starts, I want to point out that the audio quality in this podcast isn't the greatest. I didn't hit record, I guess, and the audio didn't save. So the audio that you hear through the podcast is going to be less than the previous videos. It's because it's coming straight from the phones and not through the mics. You can still hear Tim's really bad take, so enjoy. Welcome back to episode number 4 of the Heatcheck podcast. Thank you everybody for joining us. And those loyal fans, I'm not going to call you fans because those loyal people.
Do we have that kind of phone?
No, not at all. Those loyal people who watch us and just like to listen to us talk shit. Really, we haven't addressed this before, but we don't do this for anything other than our own enjoyment. Tim and I like to talk a whole lot of crap often about basketball and other various things, and so we're doing this as a side hobby. And the reason I bring that up is, people have been asking, well, when's the next episode out? You guys should be posting every week, yada yada yada. You should be doing this. I'm like, look, we're not doing this to try and be the next.
This is for the love of the game.
Not be the next YouTube superstars. We are literally doing this because we love talking the game, and we both love talking shit. So that's why we're doing it. We're going to be inconsistent with our posting. We're going to be inconsistent with our timelines. We're just here to talk sport, really.
I was going to say, I like to talk. Saying I'm talking, that insinuates I'm making shit up, which is no.
Which is quite often what you do.
No.
Yes, Tim. You don't even need to go far from our hometown to know that you're probably the biggest shit talker in the entirety of our town. And that's saying a lot, man. But anyway, so for those watching, those supporters, thanks for just commenting. Thanks for just watching the video. It's awesome. And please, I do encourage, send us messages. I get messages all the time, just people asking us questions, and I'll go through a couple that we got. But send us questions, send us whether you agree with me or Tim or whatever, because, it's all part of it. And again, we do this for just the love of talking crap.
We're not keeping receipts.
It's pretty low production.
Unless it's each other's.
We've got a guy, shout out Boxy, who does our editing, and me and Tim talk crap, but we don't. Yeah, we're not trying to be the next.
Apex editor.
Who's a popular YouTuber now? Is YouTube still
Is YouTube still popular?
Mr. Beast, I guess. No, who's the other guy who just talks crap on video? Anyway, we're not trying to be him, so let's crack on. So, oh boy, it has been since we last spoke. I believe your team was still fighting for a play-in spot. And I made a bold prediction. Well, it wasn't very bold. I made a wise and educated prediction. And I quote, I said, I'm pretty sure the Lakers are going to implode, they're going to give up, and they're not going to make the play-in. And boy, can you tell me, did that happen to them?
I mean,
did that happen? Did they make the play-in?
The tragic thing with the last stretch of games up until they were fully knocked out was it took 50-point gains from LeBron multiple times for us to even get wins, and then as soon as no, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's how bad it was, right? Like that dude had to score 50 for us to win a game against bad teams, and then to top that off, once they bench all the vets and then the games don't matter anymore, it's like, oh, the young guys start playing good and playoff energy. It's like, oh, where was that all season?
Well, look, for the people who are watching, we're not going to talk Lakers this show because we talk about it often. It's a good day to be a Boston fan. It really is. And I'm looking over at this person in the cheap seats over here and thinking,
you have to enjoy the
suck
little
it up,
W's while
boy,
you can.
Because your team, and I know I hate talking Lakers, but we just humor me for a bit. Your team absolutely sucks at developing talent. You guys have it not wrong. Outside of Magic, outside of Kobe, maybe James Worthy, you guys buy every other championship. You guys cannot develop a team. You can't develop
Y'all
talent.
developed KG.
You can't. No, this isn't about me. Stop trying to deflect. You guys can't develop talent. Outside of it literally takes Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, generational talent for you guys to have someone to stick around. You guys sell off your assets, you buy your teams, and you buy your champions. So you guys are champions out of circumstance. You're not champions by developing, and that's why you have no claim whatsoever to being the greatest sport franchise in basketball, because people go there because it's sunny, the beautiful women, and the Laker legacy, which was founded on the weather. You guys can't develop talent and you suck.
Okay, so let's go in order from that then. Magic, Worthy, Vlade, all developed on the Lakers. Kobe developed on the Lakers.
The fact you had to use Vlade Divac.
Was he not an all-star?
The fact you had to use Vlade, you had to dig so deep in the barrel to pull
I was
out
going
fucking
chronologically.
Vlade
You haven't
is
let me
exactly my
finish.
point.
I was going chronologically.
Who else you got?
How many guys have been all-stars on Lakers?
No. How much talent outside of those two guys in
Van
your
Exel?
illustrious history have
Van Exel.
Jesus.
We're talking all-stars, right?
Can somebody just get... Okay, look, can we just stop? I don't want to talk Lakers because this is going absolutely nowhere.
You started it.
I
Don't
did start
start
it.
it.
But I'm
And
looking
just
across
let me-
it. Yeah.
You've talked for a while about Boston. Let me just remind everyone, the Lakers have won one title recently.
Yeah,
Celtics
a
have
bubble
won.
title. Yeah.
The Celtics have won one title since 1987.
The Celtics
One.
had the greatest dynasty of all time. They've got the most wins in NBA history, and they know how to develop.
They don't have the most
talent
wins.
and skill.
They have less regular season wins than
Okay,
Lakers.
for the sake of
And
the
the titles
viewers,
are
for the
tied.
sake of the viewers, let's stop this Laker crap and move on to one of the. I don't know how to say this. Kevin Durant is my favorite player by far. The Boston Celtics are my favorite team. So I've been on a roller coaster of emotions over the last week or so because I want KD to succeed, but I want the Celtics to succeed as well. And at certain times of the last week, I wanted the Celtics to win more, but I wanted the Nets to win more. Tim, what the hell went wrong with the Nets?
I mean, there's multiple things. So injuries will play a factor, as they do. I think the biggest finger pointing, and this will be a parallel to how I kind of felt about the Lakers, is on two people. One, Kyrie, because I think the bad part of the culture there can be attributed to him and his attitude towards the team and putting other things above it this season. But ultimately, it's decision making. So the same way LeBron ultimately has to be culpable for what's happened in Los Angeles, Durant has to be culpable for what's happened in Brooklyn. They trade away a guy like James Harden. James didn't want to be there, but that didn't just happen overnight. It's not like he asked for a trade to Brooklyn.
Well, he
play there.
asked for his way out. That's not KD's fault.
Yeah, but the environment that's there. Because ultimately, that team was built on bringing in KD and Kyrie, right?
Yeah,
And
well,
KD's,
yes.
KD's ultimately the mover and shaker in that. Same way LeBron is with the Lakers. You can say it's LeBron and AD all you want. LeBron's running the
Disagree,
strings.
man. LeBron's a GM. KD just wants to go out and hoop. Yes,
You're
he's
not
got
covering
influence.
for your boy?
Yes, he's got influence. He's got influence because he's a superstar, but he doesn't have influence the same way LeBron has influence and gets players traded and demands people in and out. KD has come out and said, dude, I just want to hoop. I just want to go out and hoop. I don't think KD's only to... I'm going to play the game that I played with you a few weeks ago. Percentages of blame. Who gets percentages of blame? Kyrie gets 50% of that blame. If not more. Kyrie gets 50% of that blame.
I agree with that.
Nash probably gets about 25% of the blame, and KD gets about 20% of the blame, and that last 5% of the blame is just what I call playoff unluckiness or season unluckiness with injury. If we go through a timeline of the Nets, right? We go through a timeline, because I'm pretty sure the Nets beat Celtics 4-1 last year. But if we go through a timeline this year on the Nets, it all starts with Kyrie. Everything starts with Kyrie and these mandates and not getting vaccinated. Because what that does is that now puts the team in a position where they're without a bona fide superstar, they're without one of the greatest scorers in the league, and what it does is it forces KD and it forces James Harden, who are capable, to go out and win games, carry more load. You fast forward a bit, injuries plague the entire team. There's nothing you can do about that. And then the Nets halfway through the season are in a position where they've got to start winning games. So it's no longer, man, we're going to cruise to the postseason. We've got all these MVPs. It's like, no, we've actually got to start winning some games. KD goes down. Kyrie's half playing. Harden does what Harden does best, and he pitches out on his team, and he demands a trade. And I can actually, this time I can understand it with Harden. You know, you guys were the favourites to win, potentially be the greatest trio of all time to ever step forward on a basketball court. Kyrie does Kyrie. KD is great. And then Harden's thinking, it's actually not going to be as easy as I thought. All this Kyrie drama going on.
Do you think it's as simple as it's not easy?
The coach was playing through...
Do you think he was sold bill of goods that wasn't delivered.
I don't know if he was sold anything. You're playing with Kyrie and KD. I mean, how much more could you want? He was upset that a lot of the end of game plays, a lot of plays weren't going through him. So that plus the Kyrie drama, he forces his way out. So you don't have the Kyrie drama. Harden basically doesn't leave, in my opinion. So that's why I give Kyrie 50% of the blame, because he, even though yes, it's his own personal decision not to get vaccinated, that was the start of the waterfall that trickled to losing games, that trickled down to team synergy, that went down onto crap. We've actually got to play hard here, because the interesting thing about the Nets, right, is they were 7th seed. When KD come back from his injury, it wasn't a slow amalgamation back to playing. It was, all right, KD, come back. We need you. We need to win some games. Bam. The pressure on KD day one after being injured was, we have to now win games. We're now playing for a play-in spot. So what did KD do? Put the shot team on his back, got him to the postseason. Then what did he have to do? Go up against the Celtics, the greatest team you could argue post-Christmas.
I think
I'd
stick with going with the best defensive team in the league. That's probably better.
I think they're up there, of course. But what I'm trying to get at is, I think Kyrie gets most of it. Nash, I like Nash. I'm surprised they're not firing him, to be honest. But then again, has Nash truly had a fair go at a season?
Coming from a Lakers guy, firing the coach isn't always the option.
No.
It's not always the right move.
But if we look at that, now let's talk about the series. We know how we got to where we got to. We know how the Brooklyn got to 7th seed. But let's talk about the series. What are some main takeaways you took away from that Celtics Nets series?
I think chemistry obviously is important for one. I think having philosophy and having everyone on board, everyone pushing the same waka and on the same principle is important, because clearly Brooklyn didn't look like they were. They didn't look organised. They didn't look like they had no game plan for, again, what was, I guess, was going to be an obvious way for the Celtics to tackle them, and they just couldn't respond. I will say, I don't think he played particularly badly, but word that LeBron, KD would be getting killed a lot more than he is about how he played as well. Because that's the thing. The thing last year was, he's the best player in the world. And it's like, well, if you're the best player in the world, you get past the first round. I'm sorry, but you do.
There was a large group of people calling LeBron the best player who didn't even make the play-in. So get off that horse now.
I'm not sure he is anymore. But
get off that horse right now.
No, but I'm just saying, if KD's that guy...
KD is that guy. Who has KD got surrounding him? Now, let me just say, some of the role players on the Nets did do their job this offseason, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think, to be honest, Harden requesting a trade was the end of Brooklyn's title run, because that whole team was constructed around those three. Harden demanding out and replacing him with Ben Simmons, all of those other pieces were put there to support KD, Harden, and Kyrie. With him demanding out, you've got pieces there that no longer fit whoever they put in. Doesn't matter who you put in. So what I'm saying here is, I just want you to, I'm going to stop there. You haven't yet said a good takeaway about the Celtics. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for that to
say that they're the best defense in the league.
Yeah, but what takeaways did you take from the series, Tim? I'm just sitting back waiting for you to praise my team.
We'll pull up receipts then, since we referred to that earlier. Just again off camera a few months ago, we had a discussion.
If you pull up we're not talking the Lakers. Don't even bring them up.
I'm not talking about the Lakers. I'm not talking about the Lakers at all. I said that your boy was that dude, and he was legit.
Yeah, fine. Tatum.
On camera, not Tatum.
And I still hold that belief. I haven't 100% bought into Tatum. There's something about him that I just can't. I don't know what. Well, I do know what it is. I think it's his.
I'm more than happy to go back and reverse history. You can have Lonzo, and we'll have him if you don't believe.
No. I'm not saying I don't want him on the team. I'm just saying I can't believe in him like I do KD. I don't believe in him like I do Steph Curry. I don't know what it is.
There straight away.
I don't know what it is. Something about it. I just think that in my mind, the Celtics leaders have always been a bit of cocky, arrogant dogs, and I don't mean dog as a insult. I mean, they've got that dog-like attitude. You got Larry, he was a monster. You've got Paul Pierce, who was one of the KG, was a monster, and you got this nice, soft-spoken, humble Kobe 2.0 minus the mum mentality. And I just think, as a Boston fan, personally, I like those guys with a bit of fight in them. I mean, Tatum's incredible. He's an incredible talent. He's long, and watching that series, his defense, that was my main criticism. My main criticism of him. I said he should be the most elite defender in the league. He's 6'8", he's versatile. He is virtually Kobe's body. He should be better defensively. This series, he 100% was.
It's definitely a team effort defensively, but he made a massive stride in terms of going up against a guy like KD. Like, admittedly, it's one of those point of attack things where, like, certain players will get more credit because of a system doing it, but he still absolutely played his role to perfection.
And look, I'm not completely ignorant, like some Laker fans. I actually can kind of offer an alternative viewpoint to that defense and why Boston was so good. And it's credit to their team, don't get me wrong. The team defense is amazing, but that makes it easier when you're one-on-one defending someone. Knowing if you get beat, knowing if you get screened, the switch is just as good as you defensively. You can commit 110%. You can get all up in their body, you can get closer, and if you get burned, it's not a bad thing when you're the Celtics because you've got other 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" guys there who can switch, and now they can cover you. When you're normally playing a game, if you're the best defender on the team, right, you want to try and stay with the best player, so you might fight under screens, you might go over screens. With the Celtics, everyone on the team was so good defensively. So Tatum could play KD and Kyrie the way that they could because they knew the next defender was just as good as them. So credit to the team. But do I give heaps of stock defensively for that? I'm not so sure because essentially playing, it's just like KD on the Warriors, the argument people use, well, KD was able to score so much because Steph and Clay were open. Very true. 100%. That is true. That is true. Defensively, the same for these Celtics. So the only thing I'm going to say is I do like Tatum. I haven't bought in 100% to Tatum just yet, but that last series definitely made me. Now let's talk about what
There's one thing. Okay. I want to hang on Celtics as well.
Oh,
so
yes.
You've followed them for a while. Obviously, you'll follow them closer than I do. How much? Not tainting with legacy, I guess, but the best way to put it, with Ime to come in and implement the system and get the team to buy into it.
Yep.
And the progress he's made with this team.
You're going to talk about Brad?
Where Brad was.
You're going to talk about Brad?
I mean, ultimately, Brad backed him, so that's still Brad's credit as well. But a guy who is looked at as being, he's a great coach, and then he gives up on coaching the team, moves into the front office.
Yeah.
But then now that judgment
I think that's signs of a good leader. I think Brad realised his time was up with this crew. It's a really hard job to take individuals every year, different individuals, get them to mesh, get the same buy-in, and especially if you haven't had success for some time, people will start questioning, do you know what the hell you're talking about? So I think that's a good sign of Brad's behalf to be like, this is probably the time I need to step away because I'm not getting the job done. And for Ime to come in again, he's probably riding off that new coach kind of aura, that new coach energy. And it's exactly what these young boys and Tatum and Smart and Brown needed. So I don't think it detriments his legacy at all. But let's talk about what the Nets didn't do, because if you look at the games, game one, that was a tough game to lose on that Jason Tatum buzzer beater, and then to lose the next few games by a margin of 16 points, they won those 4 games, but not by a huge margin. So what did Brooklyn need to do to even win one game, in your opinion?
Well, in terms of you putting me in Steve's position,
or just observing as an observation. What are some things I guess you thought the Nets could have done or should have done with the roster that they had?
I think they needed, again, this is going to seem like I'm just blaming him again, but they needed Kyrie to be a better playmaker. That's 100%. Where I think if I was the Nets, and this is why I kind of was talking about with blaming KD earlier, I feel like if you have to give up one of Harden or Kyrie, surely it's Kyrie. Harden has his knocks and there's fair cases you can make against him, but I feel like having the ball in his hands and having KD as a threat off the ball would be a much better way for them to have attacked it. So I think the main issue is if you're still asking Durant to create most of that stuff by himself, it's not that he can't do it, but asking him to do it on volume, asking him to do it against a really good defense, and just have everyone The other thing when you have a really good individual operator is everyone else tends to stand and watch as well. So I feel like they're just
there was a lot of that.
There was no. It's like watching 2013 Kobe Bryant on the Lakers. It's just terrible. Where you're just watching guys stand around, watch them work, and you've got parts that could be contributing, but it's just there's not a better way to get out of it. So the weird answer is I'd try to take the ball out of Durant's hands more, but that doesn't.
They did a good job with that.
Well, yeah.
They did a good job with that. I think if I look at the entire series and I was Steve Nash or I was Sean Marks and I look back and said, what went wrong here? First of all, you have to address what went right. The Celtics played amazing defense and they were pretty efficient on offense. They played like one whole unit. So that's what went right for the Celtics. What went wrong for the Nets was defense. I think that was their number one problem. They had nothing but scorers. Patty's tiny, Seth is tiny, Kyrie's tiny. He was getting eaten up on defense. So if three of your four top scorers are too small to score over giant defender, that's hard for them. And then they've got to go down the other end and defend these giant bodies. So if you look at minutes played in the last month, guess the two players who top minutes played
in the last
in
month.
the entire league.
I mean, my read would be Durant would have to be one of them.
Yes.
100%. I just don't know who I put second.
Kyrie.
Really?
Durant and Kyrie,
Jeez.
number one, number two in terms of minutes played in the last 12 months. So that's the load that those two had to burden to even get to where they got to. Now they go to the postseason where on one end, Katie's getting defended by Jason Tatum, and on the same end, Kyrie's getting defended by Marcus Smart, the Defensive Player of the Year. On the other end, they now got to go and defend these guys, and Kyrie's a small body. Defense killed the Brooklyn Nets this year, and without even if Joe Harris come back, wouldn't matter. Defense is what killed the Nets this year, and I think the difference maker, at least to force a game 5, would have been Ben Simmons, someone they could put on Tatum. If you watch Tatum in all those games, he would just shoot over guys like nothing, unless it wasn't Durant defending him.
And I know there's people out here killing him. How much do you make of it? Do you really think, say he'd been healthy the whole series, do you think that makes that much of a difference?
I do, because what do they need? And I'm getting to the point next. They needed defenders and they needed playmakers. They needed someone who could initiate some sort of offense to get KD and Kyrie and Seth and Patty free. Ben Simmons is elite at both of those things. I wouldn't be surprised if there'd be a game 7 if Ben Simmons plays. He doesn't have to score.
You see them going from sweep to 7.
Well, what does Ben do? He gives you at least 10 points a night, and he gives you easily 10 assists, and he gives you elite defense, probably up there with Marcus Smart's. So, yes, does that make a difference? Hell yeah, it does.
I see it making a difference in so much as he'd help them throughout the game, but the main crux for Ben has been fourth quarters.
Doesn't need it. That's when Kyrie, KD can step up, but because they were being
he'll
hammered,
keep them in the game until that point.
And that's all they really needed. I do think Ben Simmons would have been a difference maker. However, I say that to say this. Ben Simmons coming off not playing for an entire year, would he really have made a difference this series? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
don't. He hasn't played for a
Ben
year.
Simmons?
Brand new. If he had been back in the team for a few more months, yeah, I think he would have been a difference maker, and I think the Nets would probably force a game 7 at least. But in terms of what else went wrong for the Nets, KD just shot 38% for a series. Was worst playoffs, I think his worst playoff performance of all time. But again, when you look, people look at it in the vacuum. They see the numbers and they go, Durant sucked. It's like, well, hang on. Off the back of an injury, most overloaded player in the league at the moment, with a team that has zero defense, with the best defensive team in the league. There's so much context there that Durant is suffering from. Claxton shooting 1 from 10 from the free throw line. There's just so many little things that contribute to this big picture.
It's a double-edged sword, because I think, again, clearly it's not all his responsibility to bear, and he was carrying the majority of it. At the same time, that's always going to be the expectation of the best, is that, like, in those situations, you just have to find a way. Because people are always going to, it's not always warranted, but people are going to kill you if you have those kind of numbers in that kind of series.
Yes, but I think people quite often overlook the context in this situation. Did
100%.
Kyrie suck this series? Yeah. I mean, but dude was starving and hungry, man. Like, I mean, this guy's fasting. It was just the perfect storm of crap. And I just look at KD, and I just think I feel for this guy in some ways. I mean, he put up big numbers, but when you have to put and I think what happened is the Celtics looked at what happened to the Bucks last year, and if you see what happened in the Bucks last year, KD was just gassed in that last game. He was stuffed, and even though he can still do great things, I think the game plan is just wear the dude out, and the Celtics did that to their credit incredibly. They just wore on him and wore on him and wore on him. The last point I want to bring up is just Nash again, and it's just ISO ball. And if you're Nash, you're in a tricky position. If you know, let's say you go to a pet shelter and you go and you ask the vet, hey, I want the dogs that don't piss the bed or whatever. And then they go, oh, we've only got 3 dogs left, they all piss the bed, but you take them anyway. I can expect those 3 dogs to piss the bed, right? Because that's what I've been told. That's their tendency. They're going to go piss the bed at home. You've got 3 of the best isolation players in the world on one team. What did he really have to work with? You've got guys for their whole entire career who are the best isolation players who've ever lived, and now you're going to try and put all 3 on one team with one ball and expect something other than ISO ball. The Celtics knew that, so what do? Some other defense.
Okay, so going back to a point, ISO, as good as a ISO player as KD is, when was he the best in his career?
The best what?
When was he at his best in his career? It was in Golden State.
It
right?
was Golden. It was Golden
and,
State.
like, admittedly,
but I mean, his
plays a part in
MVP
that.
year was OKC, so you could argue that, yeah.
Yeah, but as a player, he was able to contribute in a certain way because of the spacing that was afforded to him, of course, but it's also because he's playing in a system that allowed him to get better looks. So ultimately, I think for a guy like Nash especially, who knows, again, like an offensive genius, surely it's hard to get by from players, especially, again, as a very...
Well, 3 superstars too.
Very not established coach with, again, Kyrie, who's won a ring and very steadfast in his own beliefs, and then KD, who's obviously won a ring, and
Harden, who quits on everybody.
He had to get buy-in, and I don't think he got buy-in completely.
No, but how do you with 3 of the best isolation players? And I guess that comes down to management and looking at, you can't just throw talent on a team, and I thought they might have learnt that already with the Lakers, watching the Lakers play, with watching, people try to create super teams. To some extent, yes, you can just add so much talent, undeniable talent, that your team will win like the Golden State Warriors. But a lot of times that doesn't work, and Brooklyn...
They still have to mesh.
And to your credit, Durant's best year, I think, was an OKC, in my opinion. But I think so many things went wrong for the Nets. Without defense, the Celtics just proved you're not going to win a chip.
I mean, that was always the nightmare scenario when people didn't foresee this happening when the Nets all kind of came together, especially once Harden joined, was always, we know they can score a ton, but who are they going to stop? And there's been spells where they've looked like they could maybe hold it together, but that's ultimately what it is. They're not a good defensive team.
Yeah, 100%. Great offensive, terrible, well, not even great, but okay. So we've got a pretty interesting playoff picture remaining, with the Celtics making it through, Golden State making it through. If we look at the remainder of the playoffs, who do you have coming out of the East? Now, do you remember who you chose last time coming out of the East?
I believe it was Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think you chose Bucks.
With
with the remaining left? No, with the remaining who wins what? Because you got the Celtics versus Bucks next, and that is probably an Eastern Conference Finals should be series. Who do you think wins the East this year, man?
It's hard because Middleton being healthy, I think you take the Bucks because they've been
really.
But as things stand, it could be a lot more of a toss-up, and it could be a hard road. I think Giannis still has the capacity to explode against that team, even being the best defensive team.
Yeah, it's Giannis. Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. But I'm a lot less confident, I guess I'd say, than I would have been maybe 2 weeks ago about them going through.
Yeah, and with the Bucks, the Nets didn't really have an offensive big man, right? So it would be interesting to see the Celtics defense against a bona fide big man who can score, who can work the post, because the Celtics are wiry, they're long, and they're strong, so they're great switch defenders, they're great perimeter defenders, On the interior, they got Rob, but I don't think he's as tall as Giannis. I don't think he's as big as Giannis. So it's going to be interesting. I'm just praying to God that Celtics don't do what Dame Lillard likes to do, which is have an incredible first series and completely shit the bed the second series and get eliminated. I dislike Dame Lillard a lot. Not because he's done anything personally. Not because he's done anything to me personally, but because there's been times in his career. There's times in his career where he's eliminated genuine playoff finals contenders in the first round just to get smoked in the second round, and he's done it. He did it to OKC. He did it to the Rockets, and it's just such annoying. It's so annoying because these guys beat these contenders first round, and they get smoked the second round, and it's just That's why I just like that.
Let's go back to that OKC team. We've seen what Westbrook's made of. Let's not sugarcoat things. Come on.
We've been through this. Westbrook wasn't your worst player this year. He was, if anything, your second best player. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers.
You can't just.
Well, I know. I'm just saying. I don't like Dame Lillard for that. But we've got sidetracked. Who wins the East?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, for me, it's a realistic
arrogance, people. This is arrogance and blind hatred
it's a realistic
towards a
scenario.
team. You just don't want to say my Celtics.
Can you not interrupt me? I thought this was the thing. We're not going to interrupt each other.
You don't want to say my Celtics.
I could see the Celtics winning. I could see the Bucks winning. I could see the Sixers winning.
Pick one. Don't hedge your bet. Pick one.
Okay, Bucks.
There we have it. In his arrogance, he can't even say the team that he knows is probably going to win the East, Celtics. Okay, what about the West?
I mean, it's kind of playing into Golden State's hands.
Yeah, they're looking good, man.
They are.
They are looking good. That Jordan Poole, Clay getting injured was probably the best thing for that kid because he was, I think in his rookie year he shot like abysmal 30%. Clay goes down and Poole's got to step up. And I remember Draymond saying something a long time ago along the lines of he could be as good as Steph or something like that. So I kept an eye on him, but he has just had a coming out party. I think he's actually flashier and better with the ball than Curry is. He looks a step faster and he looks a step craftier than Curry with his especially when he splits the defense and attacks the rim. No contest on the shooting with Curry, even though he's a better free throw shooter this season, Paul is. But okay, I think I'm with you on the West. I think it's Golden State
to lose. Really,
it really is because if you look now, I mean Booker's back today, I believe. Booker's back today. If they can get back healthy, Suns are looking nice. Bit disappointed in the Bulls this year, I must say. They had the makings of a bloody good super team. They didn't have any true superstars, but they had
pieces. I think there's bits and pieces here and there. I mean, there's a lot of ingredients in it where it's like an A or A minus ingredient, like Billy Donovan, DeRozan, Levine, like good guys who are good, but not necessarily guys you pick on their own to like lead you to a title. And I think they promised a lot. I think they played well, obviously early in the season, but just maybe that was their ceiling. Yeah. I think injuries, like a lot of teams, hurt them as well.
But I mean, they've got great defenders. They to me, in terms of size of bodies, they're similar to the Celtics to me. You've got Bucket who's on, you've got Zach LaVine who's on, Caruso. They've got good pieces, but for whatever reason, the Bulls just didn't really get it done. They got Lonzo.
Caruso, if I'm not mistaken, was out in the back end of the
Lonzo was injured. Deep came back, so I get injuries, but I thought they might have given the Bucks a bit more of a run than a 4-1.
I think they're a team where if everyone's healthy and everything's running on full cylinders, they can make a run, but they're probably on the borderline of being a contender. Without that, no, they're not a contender.
What happens to Joker? I mean,
I feel really like this is weird. I don't usually have such a strong feeling about it, but the amount of slander that was coming out for Joker when they went down 3-0, it's like, man, this is like, do you have to prop up your player so much by going after another one? Like, I'm not a big Joker guy. Like, I respect the hell out of him for the way he played in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and like again, they've kind of not really been
two of their best three players are out.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They haven't really had a fair go of it since, and so he cops a lot of slander for they're only this seed, and but it's like he's clearly a highly skilled player franchise player. He's on the borderline of being the highest paid player in the NBA, if recent rumors are to be believed, and getting the Supermax, which is good for him. Again.
Does he go MVP again this year? I know we spoke about it already. I know everyone says playoffs don't matter, but when you see someone have a terrible playoff run just past the postseason and voting and stuff still to happen, I think it does come.
Are we coming back to criteria? Because criteria, maybe they should just ditch the finals MVP, ditch the MVP, and do it end of season like most sports.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
And it doesn't necessarily have to go to the finals winner. There might be someone like KD last year who doesn't make the finals, and you could still say that they're the best player that season. Whether I'd give Joker that in light of the playoffs alone, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I obviously watch Joker play quite a bit. He doesn't play like he's got flashy passes. He's got little flashy passes behind the back through the legs, and he can do that. But the rest of his game is very, very
fundamental.
It's like watching, Spurs. Old school Spurs. It's like it's beautiful to watch in some aspects, but incredibly boring in others. And I don't know where I sit with Joker, whether I'm Team Joker or not. But the Pelicans and the Suns, that's an interesting series.
I'm loving Brandon coming out. You're talking about.
Are you loving him coming out? The fact that he left the Lakers. Do you love that?
The thing is, ultimately, we won the ring. You trade him for a bona fide superstar. I think that was the right move at the time. But you can obviously see that the judgment of the drafting scouts and the player development at the time, they made the right pick. They obviously picked the right horse in picking Brandon. So I'm just happy to see him play well.
But you can understand how it further perpetuates that idea of you don't develop
not necessarily
talent, right?
Because
you give away everything for win now mentality, and that's been Lakers basketball forever. Win now mentality. Trade, get who we can.
You can always make the team better. I think that's the difference. It's not trading everyone for the sake of doing it. I mean, hell, they traded Norm Nixon so they could get Magic the Ball more. Like, he was an all-star guard, and he was still a great player after that. But you have to make the team better. And so I don't think, even despite the fact of how even Josh Hart's having improved, I believe he's in
most of those if you know.
So the trade was Ingram, Ball, Hart, I think, and a pick, if I'm not mistaken. So those are the guys that they gave up in that particular trade. But in terms of who they've looked, D'Angelo Russell, obviously, they've given up.
We don't have to go down the list of mistakes the Lakers.
But what I'll say is, I'm happy to see Larry Nance, obviously, contributing as well. But I'm more happy for Brandon because I always believed he was going to be a good player. I didn't think he was the right fit on our team because he needed the ball more, and like on a LeBron team, that just wasn't going to work. They just weren't on the right timeline.
Well, yeah, I mean, if this Pally team's looking good now with CJ, and if Zion comes back and if he plays for the Pels, that's going to be a nasty team.
And that has to be the thing. Surely, with all the stuff that we were talking about this last time out, if I'm not mistaken, about Zion possibly, imagine if he'd just like gotten everything together. Like, surely.
He must be watching this play. I mean, I think Phoenix are up 3-2 at the moment, but there's a game today or now. If somehow Pelicans cause an upset, I'd hate to be Zion right now. I'd hate to be in that position.
If you had the team they have and then you added Zion into it, like if he played his way into shape over the last month and a half, man.
I know that would be incredibly scary. The last one we'll talk about is the probably one of the more exciting ones is the Wolves and the Grizzlies. The Wolves should not be in this position. The Wolves, in my opinion, should have, with the talent they have and some of the scores that they've had, should have put the Grizzlies away already. What the hell is going on there?
It reminds me of a little bit of Utah, Denver from a few years ago, but also like it's two teams that I guess feel disrespected, like Memphis feeling like they're not being validated as being contender, and then Minnesota feeling, especially Pat Bev, like that guy just walks around with a chip on his shoulder.
He does. I quite like the guy, but I hate him at the same time.
No.
Of course you hate him because he played for the Clippers. That's the only reason you hate him. If he played for anyone else, you'd
also
be
the
fine.
stuff with Westbrook and then Steve Adams giving him one of the greatest screens I've ever seen.
Well, that was brilliant. He flattened him. That was brilliant. It was like a pancake. But I don't know what the outcome of this, because you want to think the Wolves can pull this off because of the talent that they have, but when you blow a lead like they blew. What you've done to the Grizzlies is you've given them so much hope. You can basically say to the Grizzlies, we can be down 20 and still come back and win, and that is confident that
you don't need to give a team another playoff series, because you can see that you saw that the Clippers, in theory, should have been a better team against Denver a couple of years ago. But once Denver realised that even a 20-something point lead was not safe.
Exactly. When a team has that confidence to know, because you're down 20, you go into the locker room, boys, we can do this, we can come back. Most of the time, your leader's just trying to get a rise. Yeah. But for it to actually happen, it's now belief. Those guys know there's no lead safe with the Wolves, and I think that was the Wolves. I think that was, I guess, the final nail in the coffin for the Wolves. I want to say the Wolves get up here because of their talent, but again, Desmond Bain. Now, one thing I want to touch on is Ja Morant gifted his Most Improved Player award to Desmond Bain. If I was Desmond Bain, I'd find that kind of tacky, because obviously it was given to Ja. My friend giving it to me is really only validation from a friend. It's not validation from the organisation. How would you feel if I won an award that I felt personally you deserve, but I gave it to you? Would you accept that and be like, yeah?
I think if he perceives that as being a genuine thing, not just like a PR thing, then yeah, I'd like, it's not a validation, but it's like a sign of respect. And then I think the argument's already been made about, well, like, if you go from like one tier to another, like, yeah, Ja's the better player, but did he improve as much as Desmond? Like, arguably not. I think that's the thing.
It's up for interpretation, I believe. But let's move on from the playoffs. One thing that moving on from the playoffs, but slightly relevant. One thing that happened post Brooklyn Celtics was Charles Barkley. He obviously went at KD. Now, before we go into this conversation, what are your thoughts on that TNT team? Shaq, Chuck,
Kenny,
Jet, and Ernie.
What, just in general?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on them as sportscasters? And I guess I'll give you a leading question. Is it time for them to move on?
I think, because here's the thing, television entertainment, it's not just a meritocracy. So like, and the meritocracy in this case they're not playing for an objective goal, like it's ratings and things like that, but ultimately the viewership will lead it. And like, numbers don't lie. Look at ESPN's rotation that's been hammered over the years of changing out people for their halftime shows and things like that. Like, clearly they've been onto a successful formula. I think clearly TNT is thinking about that with their Tuesday night lineup. So they're still trying to develop talent. And I think Candace, for example, is a great analyst. Eventually, I'd see her having a place there. But I get what you mean.
What do you think about their takes? Because for me, I only really started watching NBA takes on YouTube probably when they started becoming a thing, maybe 10 years ago. And those guys to me seem like the same old guys that go to the pub, they drink the same beer, they tell the same stories from 10 years ago, and it's just rinse and repeat. And for me, those guys, I just think they're getting a bit old, and you could almost always predict
what the response is going to be.
Chuck's gonna have a outrageous claim, and then I just kind of feel like they're too predictable at this stage. And I, for one, over the years have been getting more and more, I guess, sick of seeing those faces and those guys. No real new, fresh blood coming in to keep it real. Those guys are living in the past, being the same old yarns. And the reason I say that is because when Barkley come for KD, and called him a, quote, bus rider.
When you're riding the bus.
When you're riding the bus, I looked at Chuck and just said, F off. Like, if anyone in their career tried to hop on the bus, it was you.
I don't entirely agree with him, but I'm gonna take his side here. So, yes, he rode the bus, but I think there's a difference between
and he didn't even win.
Him riding the bus and a Gary Payton riding the bus, where you do it at the end of your career, versus in the middle of your prime riding the bus.
Well, hang on a minute, because you were one of the people who criticised KD for joining GSW in his prime, but now you want it to suit your narrative. It's okay?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not. That there's a difference between Barkley chasing at the end of his career,
yes,
and KD joining in his prime and joining Golden State.
So are you saying what I'm saying is Barkley is a piece of work for calling out KD for doing the exact same thing?
I think Barkley is a bit, but I get his point, because his point isn't.
What's his point?
Especially
in relation to KD.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's about riding the bus at your peak.
Do you think KD rode the bus at his peak?
A little bit, yeah. I don't think so entirely.
How?
because you join a 73-win team.
That lost.
There's no way you can cut it other than
That
what
team
it was.
lost in the finals. So you say, yeah,
So
you're
you
a
replace the
73.
worst player in the starting lineup with an MVP.
Tim,
of a
they
73-win
lost
team.
in the finals. Like, I understand the argument. He joined a 73-win team that went on and won the championship. I get that, but that's not what happened. 73-win team that lost the finals. So, for all intents and purposes, that team was not good enough as it was currently constructed to get the job done.
So you think 4 guys who've all been all-stars and...
Yeah, Nash, Howard, Malone. Oh, no, what was that team? Nash, Peyton, Malone, and who was the last
Yeah,
one?
but Iguodala wasn't done. Curry wasn't done. Clay wasn't done.
They weren't champions
Draymond
that year.
wasn't
They
done.
weren't champions that year.
They didn't win that year, but they won the year before.
They lost.
Won the year after.
And was there a guarantee they were going to win the year after without KD? No.
Oh, there was no guarantee.
No, and
But-
they were probably going
But
to lose.
KD joining them pretty much did guarantee it.
That's sports. You construct a team. Now,
Yeah, but
now
that's what I'm saying. So you can say, okay, it's about winning as a team, that's fine, but then you can't both take individual credit for that as well and say, well...
The only thing I would have entertained calling KD a bus rider
I
is
think
if
that's
he
a bit harsh.
didn't win Finals MVP
I think that's
twice.
a bit harsh.
He won Finals MVP twice, meaning he was that guy twice.
Okay, so was Iguodala that guy in 2015?
Hell no.
So the Finals MVP...
That is... Look, Iggy played incredibly because he had to
Oh, he did.
guard the LeBron,
But
right?
like, was he the
But no,
bus driver?
Curry should have won that. That's
So
one of those.
was
that's
KD
one
the
of those-
bus driver for the Warriors?
Yes.
You ask anyone on that team, he wasn't the bus driver.
He was, in my opinion, he was the bus driver. The Finals MVP was the best player on that team.
I think if you ask
Being-
anyone on that 17 team other than KD,
Being the
who the
best
guy is.
player on a championship team makes you the bus driver. Not just the point guard, being the best player. And that's what's so hypocritical about Chuck's kind of garbage here. It's like he was a Finals MVP on that team. He's not a bus driver. He's not a bus rider. He's a bus driver. And I
Okay.
think Chuck is just mad
Can
because he's sitting at a loser's table without a ring. He doesn't get that shiny little bit of thing on his arm, and he's forever resentful because Shaq rubs it in his face. Because Chuck is a loser. He's a scrub. He's not even top 5 power forwards of all time.
He's not top 5.
Not top 5.
Who you got 5 over him?
Okay.
So you got Garnett, Duncan.
And not in chronological order. Garnett, Duncan,
Dirk.
Malone. Garnett, Duncan, Dirk, Malone, Giannis. Giannis is better now, but Giannis is better than Chuck ever was. And then, who else would I put over Chuck? Now, let me just find some other...
Well, see, now you're just digging. You're making it personal because he went at your point.
The point is, Chuck is a scrub. His numbers are inflated, okay?
See, now you're going at a guy who's had better spacing on his teams and saying about his shooting percentage.
What was Chuck better than KD at?
I think running the floor. I think rebounding.
Okay, rebounding, agree. But let's have a look at that. Chuck was a better rebounder, okay? I understand that. To get a rebound, it is nothing but positioning. Rebounding.
So it's not a skill?
It's a skill to some degree, but most of the time, when you're rebounding, you ain't the guy shooting the ball. Chuck has lower field goal attempts than KD, sorry. So, of course, naturally, he's going to be in positions to rebound the ball. Now, if you look at their career averages, Chuck's, KD's, defensive rebounds are similar. I think Chuck is 1 more than KD. It's the offensive rebounds that Chuck has 4 more on average per his career than KD. So I think the difference between them is maybe 5 rebounds. But the difference between the defensive rebounds is 1, meaning Chuck 8 on offensive rebounds. Good, but of course he did. He wasn't the bloody guy shooting the ball because he sucked at it. He was a low post player. He couldn't shoot.
So you're going to tell me that he wasn't the main scorer in Phoenix?
He was the main scorer in Phoenix, but it was a different game. They all shot
and even his later years in Philly.
They all shot interior. What you just said, though, was he had better spacing. And you just said he's a better rebounder. He's a better rebounder by circumstance, not because of anything else. If KD was forced to play a true 4 position, he'd get more rebounds.
But his shooting would be worse because he'd get worse.
Exactly my point.
Because that's where I saw where you're going. It's like if you force KD to play in the same era as Barkley, his career is completely different because he doesn't get to shoot the ball as much. He's going to have to bulk up more to play against the 4s and 5s of the time.
Dirk?
Yeah, again, Dirk didn't really come out till
KG
2000s.
shot a lot of mid.
Yeah, but again, KG didn't really take off again. That you're talking about.
Yeah, I know,
15,
I know what you're
years
saying.
later.
I know what you're saying. All I'm getting at is people say, well, Barkley's a better rebounder. It's like, yeah, but that's not because he was a better skilled he might be slightly, but it's because he wasn't shooting the ball as much. He wasn't the guy that shot as much as KD. I mean, I think KD shoots 6 more a game than him. And secondly,
I don't often do this. We're going to stat check this.
You can stat check it. And secondly, offensive rebounds. When you're shooting the ball from across the field, across the court, you're not getting your own offensive rebound. Check it all you want.
Yeah, I mean, the pace and the interior play, like, I completely concede because that will always play a factor into it. So career, you're looking at about 11.7. Now the thing is, you're taking in end of career as well, because KD hasn't.
End of career.
No, well, it's like comparing. If you compare like a whole career of someone who's played all the way through versus someone who's still playing, they haven't had that dip at the end, so their numbers haven't gone down for it. So it's like if you're going to do a fair comparison, you compare two players through the same amount of seasons.
You're looking at but what about LeBron? He's not having a dip. It's gone the other way.
It's the exception that proves the rule.
KD, watch this space. KD's not going to have the same dip that Barkley had.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that at all. I think with modern medicine, just the way the players handle themselves now, then yeah. 100%.
That's the point I'm trying to make is Barkley coming at KD is a pussy move, especially from the place where he doesn't have a ring, where he tried to do the exact thing he's ripping on KD for, and the only thing that people say he's better than him as is rebounding, and that's only due to circumstance and nothing to do with skill, in my opinion.
I think if you make a mistake, you have the entitlement still to point it out to someone else. But again, the main point of Barkley's thing isn't riding the bus in general. It's like at the peak of your powers choosing to.
Well, no, his point is, why couldn't you get it done this year? That's really what he was saying. Like, if you really are that guy, you should be able to get it done this year, which to some degree I agree with. And you're right. I don't like to agree with you on this, but if LeBron was on that Nets team, would it have been a sweep? I don't think so. I don't think it would have been a sweep. But hey, I'm not saying KD's better than LeBron. LeBron's the second greatest player of all time. I'd expect that.
The thing with LeBron is he's possibly better, irony of the trade stuff aside, at making teammates better. And KD's great in his own vacuum, but I think that's where he's not always additive to his teammates.
I agree. Although his passing is incredibly underrated lately.
I'm
KD.
not insinuating he's an excellent passer. There's no way he isn't.
Let's move along. We are nearly an hour deep, and there's a couple of things I want to talk about. So earlier I mentioned people send in messages to us, right? One thing somebody asked, and it's a great question. It's something I didn't understand for the longest time, partly because it's actually really difficult to understand entirely, is advanced stats. Now,
he says, as I look on Basketball Reference.
Hope you don't need to look on Basketball Reference for this, but I just want to talk about the 3 main basketball stats, and then you can kind of chip in with, because I know you're more knowledgeable than me this on advanced stats, but the question we got was, basically, what are advanced stats and how do they work? And so I'm going to give you a simplified, dumbed down version of what I think what I know advanced stats are, and then Tim, you could probably add in. So in my opinion, there's really only 3 advanced stats that you need to know to make some sort of opinion on a player and their effect on a game. One is PER, one is true shooting percentage, and one is win shares. Now, I need to preface this by saying that all of these 3 advanced stats all have flaws to them. Some of them are good for showing other things, some of them are good for not showing certain things. So you have to, I guess, kind of look at a range of data to make your opinion on whether a player is good. What people typically do when it comes to stats is they'll look at a stat sheet, and let's take LeBron, for example, and they'll say, okay, LeBron shot 35% and he got 28 points tonight. And that's what a box score will show you. Now, for most intents and purposes, would you consider that a bad or good game, Tim? And let's say a loss. So 35% shooting and he got 25 points and a loss. For most intents and purposes, that's a bad game.
That'd be a bad game.
What it doesn't tell you is how he got those 25 points and what shots he took, and was it really a bad game overall. So if we'll go on the first one, which is PER, which is basically per. And
Player efficiency rating.
the simplest way I can explain this is they take everything positive you do on the court, like a steal, a goal, a rebound, whatever. They take everything negative you do on the court, so a foul, you chuck the ball away, a miss.
Everything quantifiable.
Everything
by current
quantifiable.
Stats, because I'll get into that as well.
They take the good things you do by the bad things you do. They subtract it from each other, and then they convert it to a per minute rating, and they give you a rating based on basically how you played while you were
your positive impact versus your negative impact.
The league average is 15.
Yep.
So what they do is they take all the data, and the average player has a PER of 15. And basically anything better than that is above average. And then you've got your players who have double the PER in some cases of an average player. And so the reason that that's good is that you can look at a player and get a rough idea of their impact, positive to negative, that they do while they're on the floor. And so I've got a little quiz for you, Tim.
Okay.
Who are the top 10, or who do you think some of the top 10 players of all time are?
Would be on PER.
On PER. You should just name a couple.
It's hard because I'm guessing this will be based on career, not like a 3 year.
Yeah, it'll be on career.
Yeah, career. Okay,
who do you think? Who's got number one?
This is regular season, playoffs, or everything.
Everything.
Yeah, so this is playoff and
everything. Who's got the highest PER ever?
I feel like there's 4 people I can think of in the discussion off the top of my head. So picking one would be hard. There'd be chronologically Wilt, Kareem, Jordan, LeBron.
Jordan and LeBron, yep, 1 and 2. So yep. Michael first, Jordan 2. Kareem is not actually on the list, surprisingly, and Wilt Chamberlain is 7th. Third is Jokic. Fourth, AD, that surprised me. Shaq 5, Robinson 6.
Oscar was a very good counting stats guy. Let's not forget Mr. Triple.
The guy that gets no love and is probably one of the worst MVPs to some people of all time, Bob Pettit. And KD, number 9, surprisingly enough. So that is basically PER. Do you have anything you want to add to that for the viewers?
Yeah, so PER will try to break down stuff. Now, there's a lot of stuff it can't account for. So like you're talking about the negative impact. It will have turnovers, fouls. It doesn't account for missed rotations. It doesn't account for bad passes or holding the ball or stuff like that. There's always limitations to measure. So I mean, PER, if I'm not mistaken, came about in the early 90s.
Yes.
So it wouldn't have become really something that people regularly talked about, I guess, in more mainstream stuff until the last 15 or 20 years. But it's a decent stat to start with, but yeah, the problem is when people like ourselves weaponize it to say, "Oh, this person's got..."
Exactly. We look at the Joker, for example. He's third on the all-time PER, but there's no way he's third all-time.
Yeah, you taking Jokic third on all-time?
Exactly, you're not. And just like you said, it doesn't account for bad decisions that aren't measurable, like poor defense, like ball watching, like not screening properly, like all of those things it doesn't take into consideration. So like all of these advanced stats, you look at them
in a vacuum.
The next one, and probably my favorite stat that I always look at, is true shooting percentage. Now, true shooting percentage is different from field goal percentage. A field goal percentage will show, let's say Tim plays basketball, he goes and shoots 1 from 10 for the night, but he has 15 points. So he's got 15 points on 10% efficiency, which you look at and think, oh,
that's
okay,
horrific.
That's horrific. But then you think, hang on, he shot 1 time. How did that? He didn't shoot a 15-pointer. So
he got to the foul line.
He got to the foul line. So what field goal percentage doesn't take into consideration is free throws or 3-pointers. And the interesting thing about 3-pointers, right? If you shoot a 3-pointer and make it, you're getting 50% more points than you would be shooting a 2-pointer, right? So you only need to be 33% efficient from 3 to equal 50% efficient from 2.
Right.
So the reason that that's important is because players can take more threes, bring down their
inefficient twos.
their field goal percentage, but increase their points per possession. So what true shooting percentage covers is it includes 3-pointers, foul shots, and field goal percentages, and it converts them to the 2-point percentage that we know, and it treats each one of those attempts as a point per possession.
Yeah, so the best way to break it down is like when you're counting field goals, for example, it's 1-for-1 ratio. So you get a point and an attempt for free throw, you get 2 points and 2 attempts for the regular buckets, and you get 3 points and 3 attempts for that. So it actually measures accurately what you.
So you'll hear true shooting percentage and PPP or PPS. Point per shot, point per possession.
You'll also hear its sibling EFG as well, which I love.
Yes, effective field goal percentage. And so, all to try and simplify, and look, these aren't easy to simplify stats. There's huge formulas that go on in the background that smarter people than us put together. But we're trying to simplify it. Basically, true shooting percentage is what you want to measure to really see, okay, when that person has the ball, free throw line, 3-pointer on the floor, that's their true percentage per point.
It's a measure of how efficient they really are.
That they're really getting. So don't look at field goal percentage, in my opinion. Look at true shooting percentage to see just how effective somebody is. Now, the last one that I think we only cover a few this talk because there is a lot, but I think the main three, and this is the main one in my opinion, is win shares. And your win shares basically is your offense and your defense and your playing time. In my opinion, this is probably the most effective in getting an understanding for just how much a player contributes to the win of that team.
And quite often you'll see a very strong correlation between the combined win shares and the MVPs as well. So the people who make the most impact. Yes, and so I think there were two ways. I think old school they used to give you 3 win shares per game won. Each a player 3, but then I think it was rejigged and maybe in the 90s or something, and so you get 1 win share per game won. So you look at players who have higher win shares, they typically, like Tim said, contribute more to the winning. They get more credit for winning of that game. So then you think, well, what's an offensive rating? Offensive rating is basically the points you score, the league average, and the possessions you have. They've got a formula for it, and then they give you a rating for that. So, and defensively being a little bit harder to rate, because basically your defensive rating is how many points do you allow, how many points do others allow, the league average, and they have a formula for it. So it takes your offensive rating as a player, your defensive rating as a player, and it gives you, and then it takes the minute you actually step on the basketball court. Because one of the other things is, if I'm a player that only comes in to grab a rebound after a free throw, or it's late in the game and they just need a big body to chuck in, I'm going to go on that floor, grab a rebound, grab 2 rebounds, and then get subbed out, get off the floor. I was on the floor, so my PER is going to look really, really good because I was on the floor, I got 3 rebounds and nothing else. I've got a great PER, when in actuality, your playing time wasn't in consideration. If you look at win share, that takes your playing time in consideration, and if you only play a small amount of minutes, they give you less of a win share. So yeah, that's why you always need rate limits.
Always. So win shares, in my opinion, are the most important. How about you, Tim? There's others that we haven't covered.
So like there's VORP, which is value over replacement player.
Yep.
There's Raptor and
box plus minus.
Yes. So I mean, there's a ton you can break down. I like win shares as well because, again, usually, like I say, it's a fairly good indicator for success. I mean, the negative argument that can be skewed against it is with defensive win shares, because it's still based on a counting stat, I guess, that it will sometimes skew towards like an MVP conversation, or skew towards good players on good teams, even if they're not necessarily channeling all of that load.
Because who's getting the points when second units are on, right? It doesn't. A lot of these stats can't actually contextualize when you're scoring your points.
And that was the biggest thing I had for true shooting, because I've heard people tout that with Kyle Korver, for example, and most of the time Kyle Korver is taking catch and shoots. It's not the same as someone having to generate their own offense. Yeah. So the point we're trying to make here is, when you look at advanced stats, if you just look at those 3 together, and you should be able to get a pretty good idea of how effective and how good somebody was. But definitely do not just look at the box score. I think that it can give you a snapshot on how well someone played, but I think if you want to really understand someone's impact, those 3 things should really help you the most. And they tend to not like Russell Westbrook, I'll point out as well.
Yeah, why is that, Tim? High usage rate?
I think inefficiency.
His blunderings on
Inefficiency?
All right, let's move on. One thing I want to talk about is, and it's something that I got a lot of requests for, was cards.
Right.
And I brought it up last video, kind of, but I did a very, very brushed over light introduction into what NBA cards and stuff were.
For the people like myself,
yeah.
just a little bit.
I've had a lot of questions from people just saying, hey, not quite, I like basketball, but I'm new to collecting cards. Like, where do I start? What do I do? What do I look out for? And I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I will give the people some places. So, as everyone knows, sports cards are a hobby of mine. And I'm actually surprised you don't collect the wrestling cards, because wrestling cards are a new thing now, and they've actually gotten really popular. Exactly the same as NBA cards, but with WWE wrestling, and people are pulling, one-of-one Goldbergs and Undertaker and Triple H gold cards, and it's really, really cool. And
it's always interested me, but it's never been something that I actually think I want to commit to. And plus, like, ultimately, it's an investment. I think you really have to love it to invest in it, and then I've never quite... It's been something I like, not something I love.
Yes and no, man, because there's, like in the last video, there's a few ways to collect. You either do it for the investment or you do it for the hobby. But within that, you can do it for the hobby inexpensively. You can buy the inexpensive packs. You can just collect what you can, or you can go a bit more intense. So for the people at home who want to get into cards, let me just say that it's probably one of the worst times to get into cards at the moment, simply because product is hard to come by, it's expensive, and it kind of is coming down at the moment, the whole market for cards.
Sounds like housing.
A little while ago, Gary Vee went out and said, invest in cards, and there was a boom. And this was right around the time NFT started taking off and all of that stuff. So there was this, I guess, communal bubble of people willing to invest in not housing and other things, but cards and NFTs and whatever. That's been coming down slowly, and it's good in some ways, because a lot of people have left the market, so more cards are available. But at the same time, COVID didn't help. It was a boom for people at home wanting to spend their money on things, and cards was one of those things. But if you do still want to get into cards and you do it for a hobby, the number one question is, well, where do I get them from and what do I buy? Okay, best place to buy your cards is online. There are some local card shops that have them, but if you want the thing that you want, the specific product you want, you're more likely going to be able to find it online and find it on eBay. Now, the problem with buying on eBay is you have to pay taxes, and the shipping to New Zealand is horrendous. So what you want to do is, there's a website called shipmycards.com. It's an amazing website. You can get your cards shipped there, and then from there they'll ship them to New Zealand, and you only pay one tax on one kind of shipping fee, as opposed to lots of little shipping fees. So that's how you would do it. That's how I would do it if I was you. Now, if you are a bit more impatient than that, you can join local Facebook groups in your area. So Auckland NBA basketball cards, Hamilton basketball cards, whatever. And people often put up cards for sale on there. You can buy it that way. There are things called razzes and breaks. I'm not going to go into razzes, but I will go into breaks.
That name alone.
And breaks. So basically, a break is where I buy a box of cards. Let's say that box cost me $300. I then list all of the NBA teams, and I say to the people who want to participate in the break, if you want to buy the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's going to cost you $10. And then I might think, well, the Lakers have LeBron James, so I might charge that team out at $20. So I'm basically charging the teams out so I get my $300 back.
Yeah.
Most people put a little margin on it, so they run a small business. But there's a thing called a break where, essentially you look at what people on Facebook will put up. Hey, I'm breaking this box here. These are the 30 teams you can pick to pay for your team. When I open that box, any single card from that team is yours, and then I'll ship it out to you. That's how it works. So right. I might open a $10,000 Steph Curry in that box, but because I paid for the Wolves, I don't get it. I only get the Wolves cards. So it's a little bit of a gamble, but it's a really, I guess, inexpensive way to join the hobby without committing to these really expensive boxes.
Also good if you're a homer, you just want to support your team.
Exactly. And so, when I enter breaks, I'll go for teams that have Steph Curry or Kevin Durant.
You don't put him for Boston?
I do also put him for Boston as well, but at the moment I'm just on a Curry and Durant collecting mission at the moment. Hence why I've got another bloody KD here. But so that's kind of how breaking works. And if you want to get into cards, do that. So similar to you, if you want to get into the wrestling side of things, that's what I would encourage you to do. Or you could just go down to EB Games. Sometimes Kmart, sometimes farmers have them, and just buy them off a shelf, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I will want to kind of, if you're doing it for an investment, if you are a person who's looking to try and make money off this, don't go and buy retail packs. Don't go and buy things off the shelf. Buy cards on eBay. Buy players you think are going to go up, and do it that way. Breaks are risky, and so is buying retail. But just buy the card you want.
Show a bit more discretion.
Yeah, show you want, sit on it. Now the other thing is just someone asked me about, well, what about numbered cards? So this is, I would call it marketing genius from the card company, but what they do is they'll print, let's say, a base set of Kevin Durant cards, then they'll change the color on those cards and print only 5 of those cards.
Limited runs.
And they'll number them 1 to 5, and then they'll do that for each player. So basically what you do is you might do a break or open a box and you might get a base card, and you might get lucky and pull number 3 of 5 of Kevin Durant, a blue one. And that naturally is going to be worth a lot more money because there's only 5 of them printed. So what you really want to look for is low numbered cards or SSP, super short print cards that only got printed a few. So if you look at this one here, this is a gold Kevin Durant autograph, but on the back there's a number to 79. So there's only 79 of these, and this is number 38 of 79, and it's usually stamped in. So it increases the value of it a bit more.
Show it to the people.
So yeah, so that's what you want to be. If you do get into cards and you're looking at it as an investment standpoint, look for short numbered cards. And I actually went on a bit of a trade journey through our TikTok.
I have seen that.
At Heatcheck NZ. Where I traded a card worth $1 all the way up to a card worth over $1,000, and I'm still doing it. I'm still trying to flip a card at the moment, but it's an interesting journey. You got to be patient, and with cards, if you're doing it to make money, you need a lot of money to start. It's not something you can just come in with $100 and in 5 weeks' time have made 5,000. It's actually something that if you want to try and really invest in cards, you need to buy some big cards, sit on them for a little while, trade some, and then you'll get your value that way. But that's what I love about the hobby is you don't have these fly-by-nighters come in, try and change the market, change the product and dip. If you want to make real money in cards, you got to hang around. You got to be a breaker. You got to be someone who's got a lot of product.
You have to put back into the game.
That's right. All right, the last thing I want to talk about, because we've really gone over an hour 13, is the draft. Upcoming rookies. I don't necessarily want to talk too much about the rookies, but I will break down for you the
projections.
The projections and who's likely to have what draft. So at the top, Magic, Rockets, and Pistons. Pistons have
the league.
Pistons have a good chance at getting. Well, they got the same chance as Magic and Rockets of getting the number 1 pick again. Which, if you think about it, Cade Cunningham, a 6'6" point guard, and then number 1's either going to be 6'10", Paolo, Jabari, or Chet Holmgren. The top 3 prospects are the only 3 I want to talk about. 7'1", 6'10", and 6'10". All of them can shoot. All of them are versatile. All of them are defenders. They're mini KDs.
I think there's definitely degrees to it. I'd say Paolo's probably the one who's you take least defensively, but he takes more offensively.
Yes, but Jabari, my goodness, that kid is like a two-way. Reminds me of like a longer Kawhi Leonard, which is insane to think about. But
scary thought.
But if you think about those teams, and it's something I guess I want to bring up because you look at the draft, and it's rightly so, the worst teams should get the number 1 pick, right? But if you look at Rockets, Magic, and Pistons, they were the worst teams last year as well. And then the year before that, like, they're getting... are we creating like a generational discrepancy here where for the next 3 years, because these teams are so bad, they're going to get the number 1, 2, or 3 picks, and then in about 5 years' time, they're going to have the greatest players, and they're going to go on this dynasty run because they got all of these picks early? Do you think the draft is a bit of a problem at the moment? How it works?
I mean, this doesn't mean to get sports political, but the reason a draft exists isn't necessarily just about fairness. It's about wage control. But Marty Jones of Game Theory does a much better job covering this than what I can do. But the main idea is it's so that they can set those limited contracts for the rookies when they come in, so they can control the flow of the players rather than the players controlling it. So, I mean, I don't entirely agree with the concept of the draft, and I don't entirely agree it's fair. I don't think it would be fair to just let the best teams with the most money do it, but there is a salary cap, so I think even the idea of having a draft and having players have to go to the worst teams and toil away, I mean, yeah, it gives them a chance to get their numbers up, but that's also can put players in a bad environment. It doesn't necessarily teach them winning culture.
100%.
So there's definitely offshoots to it as well.
Yes, because actually I learned something really interesting similar to that is I'm reading a book at the moment and it's just talking about human behavior, and it says that if you put let's say you've got a team of high flyers, right? A team of overperformers in a corporate setting or whatever setting. You've got 10 individuals who are just so good at what they do and the team culture is amazing. And then one day the boss goes, well, you know what? Little Larry over here sucks at what he does. He's terrible. He's got no motivation. Let's put him in the team in hopes to copy the others. This book says that what's more likely to happen is the others will grow resentful and drop in their ability instead of bringing that guy up. And it's similar to what you just said around rookies, taking them to a tanking or a crappy team like the Rockets or the Pistons and putting this high performer in this team of crappy people. People are more likely to follow the crappy guys because it's, you know, the resentment grows, you know, they're not seeing as supporting that person. But if you look at the Pistons, they've got a 14% chance to get the number one pick again. They had it last year. If you look at history, and if you even if you just look at the last 20 years, right? There's only been I've got it here. There's been Markel Fultz, Anthony Bennett, and Greg Oden and Andrea Bargnani. Those are the only 4 of the last 20 number one picks who were considered busts. So you've got a pretty good chance of getting an. I mean, everyone else on the list was at least an all-star.
I mean, some of those busts were self-inflicted. Let's be honest.
Exactly, but everyone else is an all-star. Zion, DeAndre Ayton, he will be. He was, wasn't he? Ben Simmons, Cat, Wiggins, Davis, Irving, Ward, Griffin, Rose, Bogut, Howard, James, and Ming. All number one picks, all of them all-stars. So when you get a number one pick, you're pretty much 2/3 guaranteed an all-star type of player. Is there some sort of discrepancy coming in the future with the way that the draft's currently set out, where these low bottom teams are getting multiple number one, number two picks? And then to top it off, did you know the number 3 picks often go on to have better careers than number 2 picks?
That doesn't surprise me at all, because you look at some of the guys drafted at number 3, again, Jordan being the most prominent example. Yeah, absolutely. Because, and you've seen this with your team, for example, trading down a few years ago and getting the better pick out of it.
Exactly.
I mean, Philly fans must still be. I mean, we drafted Lonzo, and Lonzo was good for what he was at the time, and obviously still a great player. But yeah, I think the conventional wisdom should be that, oh, maybe you should give it to the worst team to make it fair and even it out. But then the thing is, ultimately, you have generationally bad organizations like the Kings.
Yes.
Even if you're giving them the picks, it doesn't mean they'll draft well, it doesn't mean they'll retain the players, it doesn't mean they'll put an environment for them to be successful. I hate to be so dark on the bad teams, but
I mean,
history has a track record of just getting draft picks doesn't mean you're going to be good.
If you've got a 70% chance of getting an all-star for a number 1 pick, though, that's pretty good odds, right? That's pretty good odds. That tells me, just by looking at that list of the last 20 years.
That's better than the free agency chances for a team like Sacramento or Cleveland. You know, and not Cleveland right now, but, you know, like most people in an objective environment, if you're looking at signing between like Houston or Los Angeles or Miami or even like a team that's like San Antonio that's good, are you going to pick one of those organizations? No. And what's really interesting about, and just in terms of the draft, I don't know what the answer is on this one because it is difficult, but second round picks are a complete waste of time. I think there's only been a handful of second rounders who even made the Hall of Fame. No, 2. Only 2. No, sorry. 7 second round picks have made the Hall of Fame since the start of time, and they all Willis Reed pre-19. Dennis Rodman's the latest one, pre-1990. So that's not even a thing anymore in these days. So second round's virtually a waste of time. But yeah, it's really interesting the draft and who's going to go where.
what we don't know because of what I do like about the draft, I will say, is that just because you're the bottom doesn't mean you're going to win it. I like that. Even though the Rockets have a 14% chance, the Lakers could sneak in with a 6% chance of snagging that number one spot. So I do
We're not
quite
keeping
like
our
that.
pick, unfortunately. We don't keep our pick.
I do like that.
I'm guessing that's where you were leading. I'm going to throw a curveball idea out there. I wouldn't mind seeing if the NBA, in terms of reformatting the draft, rather than having a traditional draft, we've got a salary cap, right?
Yes.
So what they could do to get around that is just remove, keep the max for, say, your top 2 or 3 players. Expand the cap out, and then make it so that the rookies can negotiate. Now, still set a cap for the rookies in essence, so there's only so much they can go over. But if teams have to negotiate, you'll see very quickly, the winning teams will be, able to work within their cap, and they'll be happy to pay a decent amount. Or you could have a bad team where they're able to give them more money and give the players the chance to do that. Because I think, that's going to be bad for the bad teams, but it shouldn't be the case where you're just, again, bogging those players down, because that's going to ultimately affect their growth. There's players who, if they were in the right environment, could have grown to be all-stars, but...
you look at Kwame, with all his recent beef and all of the stuff that's come out lately is...
Even DeMarcus Cousins. Imagine if he got drafted to a good team and not Sacramento.
Yeah, but injuries killed him.
Yeah, but even before that, though.
Yeah.
You get drafted into the right organization.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was a thing, but I think it was. I remember reading somewhere that you used to only be able to draft from your area.
Oh no! So your franchise's progenitor, shall we say, Red Auerbach, had a famous reputation for making very creative use of the territorial pick. The territorial pick, and it's been a while since I've brushed up on my NBA history, but my understanding is the territorial pick was where you'd sacrifice your first round pick, but you'd then be able to claim a player that was from within your regional territory. So let's say Lonzo plays at UCLA. Even if, say, we've got the 8th or 10th pick in the draft, we sacrifice that pick and say, we'll make our territorial pick Lonzo. He's ours, no matter what. Even if you want to draft him number 1, you can't have him. So Auerbach making use of that.
Brilliant.
There was a case where I think the reason the Sixers ended up getting Will, if I'm not mistaken, was because basically they claimed back to where he played high school, because it was out of their college area. In cases like that, where they're trying to be... if they were to bring back the territorial pick, as a Lakers fan, I love it, because, again, LA being a center of culture, there's going to be plenty of... Imagine Tatum playing for the Lakers with a territorial pick.
Imagine.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of creative things they could do. I don't like the draft in its current format. I feel like it does encourage tanking. The play-ins kind of helped encourage teams not to just tank, and they're kind of not right at the bottom part, but the bottom teams know what they're going for. And they hammered Philly for it, and Hinkie. So if they really want to get rid of it, don't make the draft that way.
Yeah.
Change the format of it. You can bring. A good example is look at youth academies in football, for example. And again, the case there is you can't just lock a player in for 5 years and he can't go anywhere. It's kind of ridiculous. And not only that, you're restricting how much they can earn. If it's fair for them to say, well, you're a young player, you can only earn so much, but then locking them into a bad organization as well.
Yeah. Because what's interesting also is I think the average of the rookie of the year is pick number 4. So not always are they getting the best player number 1. Yes, you're getting a good player. Yes, you're getting an all-star. The chances are you're going to get an all-star with the number 1 pick. But are you getting the best player in the league?
And it's also the value, because again, that goes back to the most recent example being the Sixers Celtics trade. If you can get, or even the Trae Young one. I know people
Trae Young.
People like hammering that, but if you get Trae plus another pick, now they didn't end up making the most of that pick. But if you get Trae and another pick, maybe that's worth it. Maybe just that little bit of extra value you can eke out is worth it.
100%. Timmy, that's us, my friend. That is us. Thank you guys for joining us today. Timmy, next time we chat, I believe we will have a decider of our bet, because once the Celtics beat the Bucks,
this is on tape.
You are going to be wearing Larry Legend. I'm gonna put my Larry Bird card right here, my Bill Russell card right there, my nice Celtics banner in front of you, and it is going to give me great joy watching you
Not as much joy
And
as
a
watching
Larry
Tom's
Bird.
giving me. Not as much joy as
Woo-wee.
watching Tom's giving me.
I
Like,
cannot wait, buddy. I cannot wait. Anyway, thanks guys for joining us. See you around.
Peace.